And welcome again to Astronomy Daily. I'm your host, Steve Dunkley. It's the 20th of January, 2025.
Astronomy Daily, the podcast, with your host, Steve Dunkley.
Yes, we're back again, and it's great to be with you. And first things first, a huge happy birthday to my favourite person in the world. Happy birthday, Dad. I hope you are having a great day, and I'll catch up with you in a few orbits, I hope.
He's an amazing guy.
Oh, well, you don't have to tell me, Hallie.
So this is your aircraft pilot, scuba diving, community leader, pharmacist dad, right?
Yeah, that's the guy. But to us kids, we just call him Dad.
That's cool.
Yeah, I guess not everybody can say their dad can fly and breathe underwater.
Like Superman.
Sounds funny when you say it like that, but yeah.
So, happy birthday, Graham.
Oh, nice one, Hallie.
So, my favorite human, how come you fell so far from that tree?
Oh, I knew there was a slap coming. Come on, you cheeky thing, on with the show.
I was just kidding.
Sure you were.
Okay, here we go. China's mysterious spaceplane returns to Earth after 268 days in orbit. China's mysterious spaceplane has returned to Earth after spending over 8 months in orbit. The reusable spacecraft landed at the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center in a remote section of northwest China on Friday, September 6. It launched from the same site atop a Long March 2F rocket on December 14, 2023, on its third mission, and spent 268 days in orbit, according to Chinese state media outlet Xinhua. While the exact capabilities of the spaceplane remain largely unknown, Xinhua states the craft will pave the way for more convenient and affordable round-trip methods for the peaceful use of space in the future. It's unknown what exactly China's spaceplane was doing on this most recent mission, or on any other mission, for that matter. As seen in previous missions, spacecraft trackers on the ground observed the spaceplane releasing a small object into orbit. This object could be a sub-satellite deployment, or it could be a piece of hardware ejected before the end of the mission and deorbit. The spaceplane's first flight did something similar, said astronomer Jonathan McDowell of the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics in a post on X. The spaceplane appeared to conduct what is known as rendezvous and proximity operations with the object, meaning it tested its capabilities to meet up with and get close to the object in space. These operations can be used to repair or perform upkeep on friendly satellites, and it is believed that military superpowers are refining these techniques to potentially tamper with adversary satellites during any future orbital combat. China's spaceplane launched on this recent mission just 2 days before the scheduled launch of the U.S. Space Force's own reusable orbital vehicle, the X-37B. That launch was scrubbed with about 30 minutes remaining in the countdown, and the X-37B would go on to launch 2 weeks later, on December 28, 2023, on its 7th mission. Like with China's spaceplane, the capabilities and missions of the X-37B are largely classified. It is known to be an orbital testbed for new technologies, but that's about it. India is also developing its own reusable orbital spaceplane named Pushpak.
Astronomy Daily, the podcast.
What does the discovery of a binary pulsar in 1974, the discovery of the first exoplanets, and the most powerful message humans have ever sent out into space all have in common? Well, they all happened at the Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico. With a spherical reflector dish that was 305 metres, or roughly 1,000 feet, in diameter, Arecibo held the title of the world's largest radio telescope for over half a century, from its construction in 1963 until 2016. To the dismay of astronomers around the world in 2020, Arecibo's reflector dish collapsed when the support cables gave way, leading to the eventual decommissioning of one of science's most fruitful instruments. Now, not long after the decommissioning, the National Science Foundation and the University of Central Florida began an investigation into the primary causes of that collapse, and after nearly 4 years of investigation, the committee tasked with finding an explanation have finally released an official report detailing the findings. After analysing the data and the extensive and detailed forensic investigations commissioned by the University of Central Florida and National Science Foundation, or NSF, the committee's consensus is that the root cause of the Arecibo telescope's collapse, unprecedented and accelerated long-term zinc creep-induced failure of the telescope's cable spelter sockets. That's a quote. The report details how structural failure of the telescope likely began in 2017 when Hurricane Maria hit the observatory, which subjected to the Arecibo telescope to winds between 105 and 118 miles per hour. The winds subjected the Arecibo telescope cables to the highest structural stress they had ever endured since it opened in '63. According to the report, inspections were conducted after the hurricane, but no significant damage was deemed to have jeopardized the telescope's structural integrity. Still, repairs were still ordered, yet these repairs were delayed for years, and as the investigation states, they were targeted toward components and replacement of a main cable that ultimately never failed, which suggests that the repairs would not have actually prevented the eventual collapse of the observatory's reflector dish, even if they weren't delayed. Eventually, in August and September of 2020, an auxiliary and main cable failed, leading the NSF to announce the decommissioning of the telescope through a controlled demolition. More support cables gave way on December 1, 2020, causing the instrument platform to collapse into the dish itself. Thankfully, no one was injured by the cable failures. The report continued to detail how hidden outer wire failures triggered the collapse, which had fractured due to shear stress from zinc creep or zinc decay in the telescope's cable spelter sockets. Unfortunately, this issue was not identified during the post-Maria hurricane inspection, which meant engineers hadn't considered the degradation of these mechanisms as a source of potential future collapse. Despite Arecibo's discovery days being over, the observatory will be remade into an education centre known as Arecibo C3. Hopefully, the decommissioned observatory can inspire the next generation of astronomers to make discoveries as impactful as those made when it was peering out into the universe. Thank you for joining us for this Monday edition of Astronomy Daily, where we offer just a few stories from the now famous Astronomy Daily newsletter, which you can receive in your email every day, just like Hallie and I do. And to do that, just visit our URL, astronomydaily.io, and place your email address in the slot provided. Just like that, you'll be receiving all the latest news about science, space science, and astronomy from around the world as it's happening. And not only that, you can interact with us by visiting at Astro Daily Pod on X or at our new Facebook page, which is, of course, Astronomy Daily on Facebook. See you there.
Astronomy Daily with Steve and Hallie. Space science, and astronomy.
FAA to investigate Starship 7 test explosion. The U.S. Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, is requiring an investigation into what went wrong during the 7th ever test flight of SpaceX's Starship mega rocket yesterday, January 16th. The launch, from SpaceX's Starbase site in South Texas, went well at first. Starship got off the pad successfully, and its two stages, the Super Heavy booster and ship spacecraft, separated on time. And the giant booster came back to Starbase, where it was caught by the launch tower's chopstick arms. Ship was less successful, however. The flight plan called for the upper stage to deploy 10 dummy satellites about 17.5 minutes after liftoff and splash down in the Indian Ocean off the coast of Western Australia 50 minutes later. But that didn't happen. The 171-foot tall, 52 meters, craft exploded about 8.5 minutes after launch, raining debris over the Atlantic Ocean near the Turks and Caicos Islands. That work may not take too long. SpaceX has already identified a likely proximate cause, according to company founder and CEO Elon Musk, a propellant leak, which led to a fire in ship's aft section. The ship's explosion had some real-world impact beyond creating a dramatic sky show, according to the FAA. While no injuries have been reported, the agency is working with SpaceX and appropriate authorities to confirm reports of public property damage on Turks and Caicos, FAA officials wrote in an emailed statement today. During the event, the FAA activated a debris response area and briefly slowed aircraft outside the area where space vehicle debris was falling or stopped aircraft at their departure location, the agency added. Several aircraft requested to divert due to low fuel levels while holding outside impacted areas. SpaceX will lead the Mishap investigation, but the FAA must approve the company's final report, according to the agency, which grants launch licenses for U.S. vehicles. A return to flight is based on the FAA determining that any system, process, or procedure related to the mishap does not affect public safety, the agency wrote in today's statement. SpaceX wants to get Starship back on the pad quickly. The company intends to make big strides this year on the mega rocket, which it's developing to help humanity settle Mars, among other exploration feats. The ship and booster for Starship's 8th flight test are built and going through pre-launch testing and preparing to fly as we continue a rapid iterative development process to build a fully and rapidly reusable space transportation system, SpaceX reported.
Roger that, Control. We're listening to Astronomy Daily, the podcast.
Astronomers are sounding alarm bells as the world's most precious sky-observing location faces the risk of being blinded by light pollution due to a planned renewable energy project. The US energy company AES Energy wants to build a large renewable hydrogen manufacturing complex in Chile, only a few kilometres from the summit of Mount Paranal, the site of the European Southern Observatory, or ESO, Very Large Telescope, VTL. VTL, which cost some $350 million to build in the 1990s, or $840 million in today's dollars, is one of the world's most sensitive sky-watching instruments, capable of observing the most intriguing objects in the universe. The high-precision observatory consists of 4 27-foot wide or 8.2-metre telescopes that act as one and has shed light on some of the most mysterious phenomena known to humankind. But the observing potential of this astronomical powerhouse will be significantly curtailed if the hydrogen project called INNA or INA receives the go-ahead, Xavier Bacons, ESO's Director General, told Space.com. Mount Paranal, an 8,740-foot high or 2,664 metres peak of the Atacama Desert of northern Chile, is one of the last spots on Earth free from urban and industrial light pollution, thanks to the unique geography of the Andes mountain range. The star-studded night sky above the summit is perfectly clear for more than 11 months of the year, providing perfect conditions for the most challenging astronomical research. It's the darkest place where we have ever set an observatory in the world by a large margin, Barcon said. ESO, an intergovernmental organisation comprising 16 European states, set its sights on Atacama more than 60 years ago, having opened its first observatory in Chile on the La Silla Mountains to the south of Paranal in 1966. Paranal took over as the hub of European astronomy in 1990s when the VTL was constructed. So far, the VTL has allowed astronomers to trace orbits of stars in nearest vicinity of the black hole at the centre of the Milky Way galaxy, taken the first ever image of a planet outside the solar system, and uncovered the elusive cosmic web that sprawls across the entire cosmos. One of the reasons the VTL has been so prolific is the dark skies that it was built under. A survey published in 2023 found that among the world's 28 most powerful astronomical observatories, telescopes on Mount Paranal suffered from the lowest levels of artificial light pollution. The superior sky-observing conditions in the area led ESO to choose the neighbouring Mount Amazonas as the location of its next-generation sky-observing supermachine, the Extremely Large Telescope. Once completed toward the end of this decade, the ELT will be the world's largest telescope studying the universe in visible light, featuring a 130-foot or 39.3 metre wide mirror. The telescope, worth more than $1.5 billion, promises to expand the science done by reliable VLT. It will provide even deeper views to the most distant universe, but will also be able to gather detailed information about potentially habitable exoplanets. The light pollution expected from INA project would undo all that progress. We might lose the ability to observe about 30% of the faintest galaxies, said Barcons. We are at the point of starting to be able to see details of exoplanet atmospheres, but if the sky gets brighter, we may not be able to see those details anymore. The inner project, a 3,000-hectare industrial park worth about $10 billion, will consist of 3 solar farms, 3 wind farms, a battery energy storage system, and facilities for the production of hydrogen, according to Renewables Now. ESO estimates the complex will leak as much light pollution as a city, with a population of about 20,000. Parts of the industrial park may extend as close as 3 miles or 5 kilometres to ESO's telescopes, and any possible further expansion would further worsen the impact on the Paranal night sky. Expected to generate more than 217,000 metric tonnes of green hydrogen per year, the venture presents a conundrum for ESO. The organisation itself has committed to reducing its carbon footprint and even building a 9-megawatt photovoltaic power plant to supply the Paranal and Amazonas observatories with green power. But Barcon states that while the project like INA can easily find other suitable locations, for astronomers there is only one, Mount Paranal. These two things cannot be in the same place. It's as simple as that, said Barcons. This clean hydrogen plant could be perfectly okay for us only 50 kilometres or 31 kilometres away. We don't think there is any reason why it couldn't be moved.
You're listening to Astronomy Daily, the podcast with Steve Dunkley.
Okay, and that's another episode done and dusted. Thanks for joining me, Hallie, and making it a good one. Arecibo was always an inspiring place for me as a child. That was a really interesting piece. Quite a marvel of engineering.
And it features in one of your favorite movies too.
Yes, it does get a starring role in Contact, the Carl Sagan written story of the first contact with another race, starring Jodie Foster in the lead. A fun adventure, that one.
And on that note, we are okay to go.
Yes, we are. Very good, Ali.
Enjoy the rest of the week with Anna on Astronomy Daily.
And that's right, we'll be back next Monday with our episode of Astronomy Daily too.
Bye.
Astronomy Daily, the podcast, with your host, Steve Dunkley.